So we're here to talk about violence in the workplace, especially active shooter events, and the intent is not to make you a doomsday prepper. I don't want you to think that every time you go somewhere that there's going to be an active shooter event. The odds are with us that none of us will be involved in one. However, if you are involved in one, it's going to be the worst day of your life, and hopefully you've given a little bit of thought of what to do. So our intent is to make you think. George Vincent, sergeant with the Fargo Police Department, said it's something we have to prepare for as much as we like to think that it's not going to happen here. It's that kind of attitude that gets people hurt. I work with people like that. They have made it 19, 20 years without ever being shot or knocked out or anything else, and so you can tell when they respond to calls, they're very lackadaisical. They let their guard down. They just stand next to people and talk to them like their friend, and they have no idea who this person is, and then ultimately sometimes something bad happens to them after the 20 years. You do something repetitively, you come to work every day, nothing happens, you don't really think about it, and I'm not just talking about our line of work, but yours too, so you just kind of think it'll never happen here. Don't let yourself fall into that. Same thing with at your house. A lot of the things I talk about you can take back to your house as well. You know, don't think that there's never going to be anybody breaking my house in the middle of the night, or there's never anybody that's going to steal my car, so I'll just leave my keys, my $10,000, and my gun sitting in there, and I'll be good to go. Speaking of that, I don't know how many times we've taken reports for people leaving their guns and money in their car, unlocked, sitting in the driveway. It's always been a safe neighborhood. Yeah. So, FBI did a study. Federal government, they do nothing fast. The study went from 2000 to 2013. In 2000, they had one active shooter event. It peaked in 2010 with 26. However, since it's the government, it can't make complete sense. You remember the Pulse nightclub shooting, Fort Hood shooting in Texas? Those were not active shooter events according to the FBI. They were labeled as terrorist events. So depending on what your motive is, it gets lumped into different things. So the numbers are a little bit higher than that. We are going to talk about prevention and planning. However, there are no guarantees. There's nothing that I can tell you today, even if I came in here every day and we did scenarios and trained every day, there's nothing that I can tell you that is going to guarantee your safety 100%. And the reason I say that is I could give this gentleman a plan of what to do, which might work, and if this lady over here followed the same plan, it might not work for her just because they're in two separate locations. I bring this up because if you ever attend something like this and somebody tells you that I can guarantee your safety if you follow this or that, they're lying to you and you should get up and walk out. Unless they're issuing you a bulletproof box, there's no way they can guarantee your safety. But we will give you some options that will help to increase your chance of survival. Is anybody in here offended by cuss words? Good, I don't see any hands. When an active shooter event or active shooter situation develops, suddenly there's a moment, a crystal clear point in time where you realize the gravity of the situation. I've not been involved in an active shooter event, but we did have, if you remember a few years ago, one of our cruisers was stolen on the interstate. There was a call came in, said there was two gentlemen suspicious on the side of the interstate. Our guys go out there, they find two guys around the wood line with their car parked. They start talking to them. They don't have any charges on them yet, but they ask the one guy to sit in the back seat so they can talk to the other guy by themselves. He's not under arrest, he wasn't handcuffed. Well, while they're talking to the other guy, he climbs through the window, the partition, jumps in the car, steals it, takes off. A few hours later, or a couple hours later, we find the car and the shotgun's missing out of it. So then there's a manhunt on looking for the guy. Fast forward a few more hours, we get a call of a guy saying, I'm babysitting my grandkid. There's a guy outside trying to break in, he's got a shotgun. So I'm not a detective, never been one, but it tells me that this is probably the guy we're looking for. So we all go heading over there, and myself and a guy that had about a year on move up to the house to the left of the guy that called it in, And he's down low and I'm up high, and as we look around the corner, a shot from the gun is fired, and instead of responding appropriately, the guy that had a gear on looks up at me and says, "Holy shit, this is for real." That was his crystal clear moment in time where he realized the gravity of the situation. The problem I had with it is at that point, instead of focusing on what I should have been, I was more worried about him because it told me that he hadn't prepared himself for that. Like, obviously, if you know you're a cop, there's a chance you can be shot at. But by him saying that, that told me that he had never really thought about it in his life that possibly could happen. That is not the time where you think, oh man, this is an active shooter event. I've done nothing for this. So I don't want you to have that moment. All right, I'm going to provide you with options that hopefully will increase your chance of survival. And most of all, it's just to make you think, again. I don't want you going out and feeling paranoid that everywhere you go you're going to be shot or killed or whatever. But I want you to think about it. Just don't live with your head in the sand. So on prevention is one, report unusual behavior. I try not to tell too many war stories, but we get to see and hear a lot of stupid stuff. So report unusual behavior, and that's by co-workers, spouses, etc. If, what's your name, sir? Juana? All right, he shows up, takes care of himself, nicely groomed, shows up early every day, talks to everybody, does a wonderful job. Over a few months, you start to see he's showing up late, not shaving, doesn't care, does nothing but complain. That's unusual for him. Either one, care enough to talk to him and see what's going on. You know, all of us have low points in our life. But if you start seeing it as completely unusual behavior, report it. Don't just let it go on until something horrible happens and then you tell us afterwards. So I went to a school and the guy teaching me had been the former SWAT commander up outside of Kansas City. They had an event where a guy went into the bank, robbed the bank. His whole plan is he knew the cops were going to get there, but he was going in to rob the bank and wanted to get out before the SWAT team got there. So he got in, had all the employees stripped down to their underwear, took a chain, chained them all together, except for one woman who was going to be the driver of his getaway car by gunpoint. So he successfully pulls this off for the most part. He gets in his car, starts heading towards the airport. Well, this SWAT commander, former SWAT commander, he said he had made up in his mind that at no point was he going to let this guy get on a plane. So as they get there, the guy forces the woman out of the van, starts to get into the plane to take off. He was going to fly to Oklahoma City with all the money he had just robbed and start a nightclub. So it's honest God truth. I can't make that stuff up. So then his plan was that once he got up in the air, he was going to toss her out. So this guy had done some research. He knew how to fly a certain type of plane. So he went and found an airport that had that type of aircraft there. And he would sit and watch all the patterns of when this type of aircraft would come in. So they ran a school out of there. So while he's writing all this down, there's this mom whose daughter is playing soccer, starts noticing this guy being kind of bizarre, writing stuff down. He does it for like an hour and he moves. So what does she do? She moves so she can watch him. He's writing more stuff down. He moves again and she thinks, wow, this is really odd. I better call Teresa. Doop, doop, doop. Hey, come over, you gotta watch this guy. It's unbelievable. It's her friend. I made up the name, but it's her friend. It's so odd she calls her friend to come watch it. Well, it was this guy. He was doing the plan. After this happened, she contacts the cops and said, yeah, I remember this guy. I was watching him and this is how odd it was and this is what he did. Don't be that person. If something is odd, call. I always say we'd rather go out to something that is nothing. I would rather go out and be cussed out by somebody for harassing them when they're actually doing nothing than for you not to call it in and then it turn into something like that. So if you see something unusual, report it. And as I said on there, the care part, a lot of it just has to do with us being human beings. I know there's cruelty out in the world and everything else, but care enough about the people you work with. If you see they're having problems, see if you can talk to them and help them out before they go in such a dark place that something like this could happen. The reason I talk about coworkers here is you guys aren't a place that's open for business. So most likely you're not going to have a dissatisfied customer come in here and just start shooting. If something happens, it's going to be somebody that's in here, or it could be somebody that has a beef with the company higher up, so on and so forth. I also put in there the spouses part. I know it's tough to bring your personal life into work life, but my wife is crazy. And so I've told my boss, if you ever see my wife coming in here, you better start locking down the hatches because something is going horribly wrong. So I say that in a joking manner, but in all seriousness, if you have something going on in your life, whether it's a spouse or, I don't know, in-law or whatever that you think is a little off the deep end, you know, let the security know, let management know, so if they see them out in the parking lot, they can try to cut something like that off before it turns into something bigger. Planning, that applies to you and the company. I know you're going to think I work with a bunch of bums and slobs, which there's only one and he's here. So they think that the sheriff is supposed to provide them with everything. If there's any training they want, the sheriff's supposed to provide them. If there's any equipment, the sheriff's supposed to provide them. And just like you all, when it comes to your safety dealing with this, I got to admit, you all work for a great company. I was just telling them earlier that this is the first company that I did this at about 2.5 years ago. And when Mr. Slaughter and at the time Mr. Spurlock, we were talking and they were saying, oh yeah, we could do this and we could do that. And I got to admit, when I walked out of there, I thought, oh, these guys are really nice, but there's no way they're doing any of this. They've done everything that they said they were going to do. They did stuff for us to help assist us get into the building by doing certain things, putting labels on the buildings, putting safety teams together with AED, CPR. You all work for a great place, because about the other 70 I've been to, when I tell them they should put blinds up, they don't even want to spend the money to do that. So, but what I'm headed back to is that even though this place does a lot for you all in terms of this for safety, some things are upon you all, you know, to take your own time to figure out what you would do or what you should do, and as we'll talk here in a minute, rehearsing it. So, developing a plan, promise you, I'll be done here shortly. Developing a plan. So I know a lot of you all don't work in an office, but it's the easiest for me to throw out there to give a scenario, is to come up with a plan wherever you work most of the day. If it's in an office, my plan would be, I'm going to keep my door locked at all times. If it's open, that way I can just get up and shut it in case something bad happens. I was talking to you about the way the body reacts. The other thing that happens under high stress, especially life-threatening, is you lose fine motor skills. Your body goes into a mode to protect itself. It's an amazing piece of machinery that when that happens, it sucks the majority of your blood into the main portion of your body where the vital organs are to sustain life. Well, the problem with that, though, is that if you try to do something fine motor skill-wise, like to take a key and put it in something, you're going to have a difficult time to do that unless you practice under stress all the time. So that's the reason I would throw in there, like, keep the door locked at all times. So all I got to do is get up and do a gross motor skill and shut the door. I don't have to worry about getting keys. I'll tell you off the top of my head that what I'm worst with under high stress is anything technological. It'll take me 2 minutes to dial a phone number because I'll keep hitting the wrong stupid button on my phone if I'm under high stress. That's the reason I just go to the radio and push one button. I can still do that. So develop your plan. My plan is to get up, shut the door. I'm going to take this filing cabinet, move it over in front of the door so I can deny access. Good plan? Decent plan? Unless I can't move that filing cabinet. The only time you're going to be more stressed out in an active shooter event is when you've had a plan on what to do in an active shooter event and that plan fails. Because then it failed and now you got to try to get into that logical thinking, which isn't going to happen most likely. I went to a daycare to do one of these, not while the kids were in there, for the teachers, or whatever you want to call them. And her plan was to take this bookcase and move it over in front of the door. And I said, well, have you tried that? And she said, no. And I said, well, do it now. Little did she know that everything that's over 2 feet high in a daycare is bolted to the wall. So she could not move it. So when you develop your plan, you need to rehearse it physically and mentally. It's good if the company gets on board and gives you 15 minutes to rehearse it so that you don't look like the wacko that has the unusual behavior running around diving underneath stuff and slamming doors. But rehearse the plan physically and mentally and see if it works. The mental part, the example I always give is if you watch the Winter Olympics, you have people that have trained their entire life for maybe one shot to do an event. And they're up at the top of the hill on the ski event, and you'll see them with their goggles on, their earbuds in, and they're kind of going back and forth with their eyes closed. They are mentally rehearsing that course in their head before they ever even started. These are people that have trained their entire life for one event, and it works for them, so I know that it works for us. One of my plans was always, I didn't want to be, if you ever listen to, I don't know why you would, but if you ever get on and listen to YouTube and people calling in pursuits and shootings, it sounds like, ah! And you have no idea where they're at or what they're doing. So one of the things I always rehearsed driving around was, in my mind, mentally rehearsing that I had been shot and getting on the radio and saying 3307, I've been shot, send me another car and an ambulance. Because I didn't want to be the guy, one, on YouTube, but two, I didn't want to be the guy that was sitting there bleeding out because nobody's coming to help me because they don't know where I'm at. On that same note, I'll jump ahead a little bit, is if you call 911 for anything, kind of practice in your head what you're going to say to them. I know the event might change. First thing out of your mouth should be your location. If it's a home phone, then you don't have to worry about it. If it's a landline, you just dial 911, and then I would probably give them some other information because they know where it's coming from. But a cell phone, they have no idea. That way, if I get disconnected, they might not know what's going on. They might not know there's an event happening here, or what the event is happening here. But if you tell them the address here, they're at least sending some sort of help. After you tell them your location, you want to tell them what scenario you have going on. I want police, I want fire, I want ambulance, and then head into, or is a person having a heart attack, or is an active shooter, wherever the case may be, so that the appropriate personnel are responding. After you've identified the flaws in your plan, make the necessary corrections, rehearse it physically and mentally, until you can run through that and it works out the way that you want it to work out. And ultimately, the way you want it to work out is for you to be walking out of this building or wherever you're at instead of being carried. Play it through to the end. See yourself succeeding in whatever you're doing. With that said, just because if you are involved in one, just because you've been shot, does not mean you cannot continue on. Just because you've been shot doesn't mean you have to collapse right where you're at and you're going to die. There's a lot more people shot and that are still out there living and walking around and living a full life than there are those that have been shot and are dead. This is a 6-minute video from the Department of Homeland Security, and we'll talk about it afterwards.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
All right, so first of all, you want to sound the alarm. And when I say sound the alarm, that comes back from one of the basic general orders from the Air Force. And it doesn't mean that there's a physical alarm. That means that you're letting people know that there's a possible emergency going on. It definitely does not mean to pull the fire alarm if you see an active shooter in here. 1, because people are going to think it's a fire and not an active shooter event. 2, what a fire alarm does is get everybody to congregate in one certain area, which then makes it a target-rich environment. And 3, we all know that, hopefully you don't hear, but my past experience tells me when a fire alarm goes off, that means, I'll finish typing this email and put this one thing in the mailbox and then I'll head out of here if I smell smoke or see fire. So we want people to take it serious. I don't know what steps have been taken, if any. I know that different things have been discussed. It's not an easy solution, but whatever the, if there's an actual physical alarm, it needs to be special just for that. The other part is just you running out and yelling there's an active shooter in the building. People are going to get the hint and see you and start following you. So let coworkers know if possible. As it says though, don't let other people slow you down. And so this kind of, the run kind of goes with not letting people slow you down. Some people think it's cowardice if, you know, I want to run out of the building and someone's so scared they're refusing to leave that I don't take them with me. I'll tell you that it's not cowardice, because as we talk about 911 here in a few minutes, the quicker that you can get out and somebody can call 911, the better chance your survival is. Not because we're all SEAL Team 6 personnel, but because when the cops show up, usually the active shooter either kills themselves or they direct their attention towards the police instead of whoever the original targets were. So as I said, run if it's your best option. If you hear what you think is gunshots or there's some sort of danger, and as you've seen in the past, it doesn't just have to be a gunshot either. It could be somebody in here just with a knife going around and trying to get everybody. Is if you think you can get out, then run. Get outside, get to safety, call 911. Hide if that's your best option. If it sounds like whatever's going on is right outside your door, then try to hide. Shut the door, hide underneath your desk, whatever the case may be, barricade the door the best you can. And then fight if you're in danger and it's your last resort and only option. It does not have to run in this order. You can hide first, run, and then you might have to fight. Or you can fight and then might have to run. So just because they're in that order, if I hide and I'm able to deny access to the room I'm in, if there's a window, I'm getting out. So then you go back into your run mode and get away. So on the fight, anybody here have kids that go to Boone County schools? All right, so I've seen a couple. I want to try to cut this off at the pass because we get complaints every year. For those who kids go to Boone County schools, when they do active shooter drills, they're basically taught this right here. It might be called something else. It might be called Alice or Skip to the Lou or whatever the case may be. But they're basically taught to run, hide, fight. And every year someone will go home and say, they told me at school if this guy comes in with a gun, I'm supposed to try to fight him. Well, it's not exactly what they were told. So at that point, you should either spank them for not listening or go talk to the teacher and find out who taught it and make sure they taught it right. Maybe not necessarily in that order. The fighting part comes when you have no other options. If we're all in here, and if you've seen me shoot, you know that I'm useless. This is more like an ornamental piece than anything else. And an active shooter comes in here, we have two options. We can either sit there and know that he's not just going to have some mercy on us, even though he just killed 20 people out here, or we can fight. And if you get shot while you're fighting, you're going to get shot anyways. And what did I tell you before? Just because you're shot doesn't mean you're down. So what we tell the kids in school is to fight, yes. But that's their last option. That's when I know that it's either that or I'm going to meet my maker. So on the fighting portion, as it says on there, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's not like you have to pull out a crossbow and shoot it at them or anything. There's, I don't know, 60, 70 people in here. If everybody take one item and throw it at them, is that going to make them turn around and run? No, but what it will do is distract them, and hopefully these people sitting up here will rush him before he can get reoriented and take them down. As I told you at the beginning, there's no guarantees. It doesn't mean you're not going to take a bullet. But if you don't do it, there's no guarantee you're not going to take a bullet either. If everybody in here were to pick up a chair and throw it, it's going to disorient the person a little bit. Violence is not always the answer, but when it's the only answer, you better use it well. It's for the fight of your life. Call 911, give the best description you can of the individual. In here, doesn't look like you guys really have a standard uniform. I don't mean that in a bad way. I kind of think it's a good thing. The reason I say that, companies we go to and everybody wears a green shirt and blue pants, and that person flips their lid and comes in and starts shooting, they call 911 and say, yeah, it's a guy, he's got blue pants and a green shirt on. Well, which one? So give the best description you can. You know, hair color, glasses, no glasses, hats, so on and so forth. As I said earlier, the quicker the police arrive, the better your chances are of surviving. When we do our active shooter training, I always tell our people that if we show up and the guy starts shooting at us, we're winning. Because our whole job is to show up and make sure that innocent people don't get killed. If they're shooting at us, he's not killing innocent people. He's not killing first graders that are at school or people that just came to earn a living that day. When the initial police officers arrive, know that they're not there for you. That may sound cold, but the way we are trained, if something were to happen here right now and you're laying on the ground bleeding out and there's shots being fired, we're walking over you. And the only reason, as I said, it might sound cold, but here's the reality of it. You can shoot about 7 rounds a second. It takes me 10, 15 seconds to put a tourniquet on you. That's 70 more people who just got shot down the hallway. So our whole goal upon initial arrival is to get in, stop the shooter, and then take care of the injured. Keep your hands visible. Don't make sudden movements towards the police. As you can imagine, this will be the most stressful day of your life, most stressful day of their life. Don't do anything that they could think that you're the shooter. Try and remain calm the best you can. Follow their instructions. And on the follow the instructions, if there's an active shooter and the police come in here and you're passing them and they tell you to do a cartwheel before you head out the door, just do the cartwheel and head out the door and then argue with them later about it. Again, seconds matter when it comes to this. What's that? Try it on that day. That's all I'm saying. We won't give you a 2 for form or nothing. Avoid sudden movements. Don't run directly at them. Know that help for injured is on the way. There is a system set up in, for the most part, all of the 3 counties up north here, where what it used to be is fire would not go into a building. If there was an active shooter here, fire department would not come in here until the entire building was searched. Not just walked through, but searched to make sure that there was no one else left in here with a weapon. Well, since mostly the LA incident happened at the airport several years back, is there's a system up here now that as soon as the threat is captured, contained, or killed, medics are coming in here with a team of law enforcement and starting to provide medical treatment and getting them out to get them to the hospital as soon as possible. I'll tell you that about 10 years ago now, we had done a school exercise and it took 3 hours before the first person actually had hands from a medic on them for any medical treatment. We did one 2 years ago and it took about 15 minutes. And it only took 15 minutes because dispatch, there was some miscommunication and the information wasn't given to the fire department soon enough to get their guys up there. It would have been more like 8 to 10 minutes. So help for injured is on the way. When we say we're stepping over you, don't just think, oh well, you know, they're having a bad day, I'll just keep going. Awareness means basically that this can happen anywhere across all walks of life. If you have some scum lowlife that'll go into Sandy Hook Elementary and shoot a bunch of first graders, and on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have a guy that walks into a precinct up at New York Police Precinct and opens fire. So one is completely helpless, the other one knows that he's going into a hornet's nest where everybody has guns. That tells me that everything in between is fair game. So don't think that it's not going to happen here. I talked about the OODA loop earlier, and I'll try to make this quick. But so back in the Korean War conflict, whatever you want to call it, I believe is where it originated from, is the enemy had more agile, better armed aircraft than what the United States Air Force did, or it might have been the U.S. Army Air Corps at that point. Anyways, but our planes were shooting theirs down at a rate like 6 to 1. Air Force got with Colonel Boyd and said, we want to know why this is. They have the better stuff, but we're beating them. He goes, does a study, comes back and coins the term OODA loop, which stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, and Act. He said the reason that the Air Force has taken theirs down at a better rate is because of training. Even though they have the better equipment, our people train for these incidents. They train for the firefights. So when they get up there and they see something start to happen, they already know what their options are and what they can do. So the way your mind works every day, driving into work, you're driving in the left-hand lane, you observe a car come over in front of you. You orient yourself. Am I too close to this car? You decide that I am too close to this car, and my options are either to change lanes or slow down. And then you act upon it. I think we'll all agree, well, some of us are starting to get up in age, so I might be on the decline now, but we're better drivers now than we were when we were 16. It's because every day of your life, for the most part, you've been training on driving. So when you see something happen in front of you, you automatically go to that midbrain that I was talking about earlier and act upon it because you've been in that situation before. Even though none of us hopefully have been in an active shooter event before, and hopefully you never are, going back to that rehearsing physically and mentally, your mind can revert back to that. We don't train to, when we go to the range, we don't shoot at each other. We just shoot at paper, but we train with certain movements and stuff with the paper and the targets and different stuff so that if it happens in real life, even though it's not the exact same, you have something to revert back to instead of standing there and trying to figure it out. So basically you can go, as time goes on, you can pretty much go from the observe all the way to the act in a heartbeat instead of having to think through it. Don't think it won't happen to me. Life has a funny way of proving you wrong. I don't know what's about to happen in there, but that person has a plan, and I respect them for that. And that is basically what this is about, is just be prepared. Have a plan, again, not just for here, have a plan at your house, especially if you got little kids and stuff. You can make a game out of it. You don't have to tell them we're going to practice fire drills or home invasions. But you can make a game out of it. Hey, close your eyes, and I want you to see if you can make it to the door without hitting your head on anything. Go through this stuff with them so that they know how to do things that are like a fire alarm or an actual fire in the house without scaring them to death and letting them know that that's what you're doing. Practice what you're going to do. What are you going to do at your house at 2 o'clock in the morning? You hear somebody breaking your front door down. And if you tell me you're going to get a weapon, you think to yourself now, spiritually, emotionally, physically, is can you actually use that weapon? If your weapon is a baseball bat that is sitting next to your bed, think about, can you, in the heat of the moment, physically hit somebody up beside the head with a baseball bat and be able to live with that? Do you think that you can do it? If you don't, I will tell you don't get the weapon out in the first place, whether it's a gun, knife, ball bat, whatever the case may be. Because if you don't use it on them, they can use it on you. Before we break, some people will ask, what was the sheriff's department charge for you to come out? And I always tell them that this right here is my payment. Does anybody know who that is? If you do, raise your hand. I won't call on you, I just want to see if anyone recognizes it. All right, that right there is Miss Vicki Lee Soto. She was an American teacher who was murdered in the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. After the gunman entered the school, Soto hit her students, then died trying to protect them, and has since been hailed a hero. She is posthumous recipient of the Presidential Citizens Medal. The reason I put that up there is if I were to put, and it's not saying anything bad about you all, because I didn't know who it was the first time I seen her. The reason I put that up there is what I ask is when there's active shooter situations and the subject's been called or killed or whatever, don't post their picture up on your social media account and speak their name and give them some sort of glory that they were searching for. If I were to put the creeper's name or the creeper's picture up here, you would know who it was immediately because he's one of the most oddest people I've ever seen in my life, and he's a sicko. But if anyone's hailed a hero and anyone is recognized by everybody, it should be someone like her that did some sort of heroic incident, who just went to school to teach first graders and lost her life trying to save them. So don't give the scumbags the credit or whatever you want to call it that they're looking for. All right, promise I'm almost done, but there's always one thing I like to talk about. Even though you're not allowed to carry weapons here, and I don't want to see a show of hands, some people carry weapons, have carry concealed, so on and so forth. Going back to what I was talking about before is, are you actually willing to use that weapon on somebody? There's a lot that goes in, a lot of responsibility goes in with carrying a firearm, especially as a citizen or as an off-duty cop. If you tell yourself that if there were an active shooter event, if you were sitting at the mall and someone just started shooting innocent people, if you tell yourself that I would get involved and use my weapon to stop them, you need to start training yourself a little bit better and setting yourself up for success. And what I mean by that is, if I am off duty and say out of my jurisdiction, nobody knows who I am, and there is a shooting and I hear it and I pull out my gun and I slide down the escalator handrail, and as I'm sliding down I put one right in the guy's head and he drops, I'm going to be a hero for about 5 seconds. Until the other guy at JCPenney's, who's a carry concealed guy, knows there's rounds being fired and sees me in my clothes and starts shooting at me, or the cops come around the corner who are there for an active shooter event and I stand there with a gun in my hand. So have a plan of what you're going to do. If you're going to get involved, have a plan with what you're going to do afterwards. That's the most dangerous time for you, to be honest with you. Also, don't be so selfish not to include your family in this plan. And what I mean by that, and I told you my wife was a little... So if we're at home at night and I get up off the couch, she'll say, "Where are you going?" To the kitchen. "What are you going there for?" "I want to get something to drink." "Well, where are you getting a drink?" It's 20 questions. So I have told her, if we're out and I look at you and say, "Get the kids and leave," that's it. There's no other, I'm not answering any other questions for you. Something's going on, I'm getting involved in something, you get the kids and leave now, and I'll get a hold of you later. Don't leave your family hung out to dry and not have any conversation with them, and you're shoving a McDonald's cheeseburger down your throat, and the next thing they know, you're flipping the table over and pulling the gun out and going running down the hallway. Include people of what you're going to do. And again, same thing at your house. Have the conversation with your spouse. Hey, if I think somebody's breaking in the door, I'm going to do this. You grab the kids and go in here, call 911, whatever the case may be. But have a plan. So with that, if you do fire a weapon, you need to get that weapon out of your hands as soon as possible. Either in a holster or on the ground. And I would say step away from it, but it also kind of depends on how incapacitated the bad guy is. There's a Cincinnati PD shooting several years ago where I don't know if he was off duty or a plainclothes officer, ends up shooting this guy, and as soon as he shoots him, puts it on the ground and he stands just like this. Because in his mind, apparently, or the police department trained him this way, is that you're in civilian clothes, you work with 1,200 people, there's a possibility that person showing up is not going to know who you are. So have a plan as to what you're going to do. Don't put it on the ground, kick it under the Coke machine though, and act like you had nothing to do with it. I just heard a bunch of noise that came this way. Anybody have any questions? No? If you were wondering what my credentials are, I worked at Shoe Carnival for 3 years. I was a landscaper before that, so I'm well qualified. If there's no questions, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.